Hi, I'm Georgia. I paid $3,400 for my mom's surgery bed. At my engagement dinner, she looked me dead in the eye and said my fiancé was dating my sister. Everyone else just kept eating. They already knew. But that wasn't the worst part. It's what they did after. When I finally fought back. Are you ready to hear it all? They say every family has its secrets. Mine just chose the worst possible moment to unwrap theirs. The backyard was dressed up like we were hosting a Hallmark movie. String lights draped lazily across wooden beams, casting warm halos over foldable chairs and a buffet table crowded with potluck dishes. It was one of those Arizona evenings that felt too still, like the air itself was waiting for something to happen. I had my suspicions, just not the right ones. I stood near the grill, holding a glass of lemonade that had long since watered down. 20-some family members milled around, cousins I hadn't seen in years, my brother and his third girlfriend, even Aunt Marie, who never left her cats unless someone was dying or getting married. And there I was, Georgia Thomas, 36, medical tech, youngest of three, trying to smile like everything was okay. Like I hadn't just spent the last 2 months working double shifts so my mom could have a decent recovery bed after surgery. Like I wasn't still covering the cost in my own savings, the wedding budget slowly bleeding out just so she could sleep comfortably. My fiancé, Donovan, was next to me, laughing with my uncle near the drinks cooler. He had that easy charm people gravitated toward, handsome, quick with a joke, knew how to fill a room without making it about him, or at least, that's what I thought, until I found out otherwise. Family gatherings either heal wounds or rip them wide open. That's what my grandmother used to say. She wasn't wrong. I remember the delivery guy asking me, "Ma'am, you sure you want to sign off on this alone? $3,400 for a hospital-grade bed." I just nodded. Yeah, it's my mom. The truth was, no one else offered. Not my brother, not Eden, my older sister who still lived in Mom's guest room and somehow always found excuses not to help. Not even Mom herself, who simply said, "I'm sure you'll figure it out, sweetheart." So I figured it out. I covered the bill, adjusted my work schedule, and kept my mouth shut. It wasn't for praise. It was so she'd recover with some dignity, and maybe, just maybe, see that I was the daughter who always showed up. I used to think doing the right thing would make me visible. Turns out, it made me a convenient ghost. Donovan knew. He told me we'd find a way to recoup the cost after the wedding. "We're a team now," he said. Funny how people use "we" like a shield when they're hiding things. Uncle Ray tapped his glass. The chatter dimmed. "To Georgia and Donovan," he said, "may your love be as stubborn as your mother's opinions." Laughter, clinks of glass. Then Donovan stood, wrapping an arm around my waist. I knew Georgia was the one the first time she stitched my hand after I tried slicing a bagel with a steak knife. Smart, stubborn, kind, even when I'm an idiot. I was halfway to blushing when my mother raised her glass and cleared her throat. "Before we all raise a glass," she said, waving off the murmurs, "I have something to say." I turned to her, smiling. I thought she was going to thank me for the bed, or say how proud she was, or even make a joke about grandbabies. But no. She looked at Donovan and said, "I think Donovan should be honest and tell Georgia about his little getaways with Eden." The air collapsed. No one spoke. No one moved. A fork dropped. A wine glass wobbled. I didn't blink. Couldn't. My fingers went numb around the lemonade glass. Donovan froze, mouth half open like he'd forgotten how to form words. Eden. She didn't even flinch, just sipped her Pinot like she was watching a soap opera, not starring in one. The air didn't just go silent, it evaporated. I didn't cry. I walked past the bathroom and straight out to the side of the house, pretending to check on the dog that wasn't even ours. Inside, whispers rippled like wildfire. Some guests stared at their shoes. Others acted fascinated by the potato salad. And my mom, she just kept chewing. No clarification, no hint of sarcasm or concern. She might as well have been discussing the weather. Donovan had the nerve to follow me. "Georgia, listen." I turned and stepped back, not out of fear, out of rage, the kind that tightens your jaw and makes your vision narrow like a tunnel. "I paid for the bed she recovers in, I thought. And she repays me with a verbal bullet at my own engagement dinner? Eden never looked up. Just sat there, letting the world twist around her like she was some misunderstood genius, not a liar. I felt like a character in a movie where the plot twist didn't just change the story, it shattered the screen. I didn't say anything to anyone, not yet. I walked back into the yard, slower this time, watching, memorizing who avoided my eyes, who looked guilty, who smirked. My cousin Lena caught my gaze and gave me the smallest nod. That was enough. She saw it too. She always had. My dad wasn't there. He hadn't been since the divorce, not really. His absence echoed louder now, like a missing witness to a crime scene. They want silence? I whispered to myself, setting my glass on the edge of the table. Fine, but they won't get ignorance. I wasn't falling apart. I was recalibrating. This wasn't going to end with tears. It was going to end with truth. And it started tonight. I raised my glass anyway, not to toast, but to make a promise they'd all regret. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't slam a door. I didn't shout. I just picked up my purse from the side table, walked through the yard like I was stepping out to take a call, and kept walking until I reached my car parked a few houses down. I slid into the driver's seat, shut the door, and sat still. From where I was parked, I could still hear the soft hum of laughter and clinking glasses drifting through the air, floating from the backyard that had just imploded. It was strange, how the music kept playing, how the world didn't stop. It made me feel like I'd imagined the whole thing, but I hadn't. The silence inside the car, the heavy silence, made it real. My lipstick had smeared along my bottom lip, probably from where I'd bitten down hard to keep from screaming. I caught the mess in the rearview mirror. It looked like a bruise. Sometimes silence tells you everything people won't say out loud. I turned off my phone. I didn't want to see who was calling. I didn't want to read whatever half-truths were waiting for me in my texts. For once, I didn't want explanations. I wanted stillness. But stillness isn't the same as peace. Sitting there, the images started flooding in. Not the explosion that had just happened, but the smaller cracks I'd painted over for months. Like at Thanksgiving, when Eden laughed a little too hard at Donovan's dumb joke about stuffing, her hand brushing his as she reached for the wine. Or at my cousin's wedding when I caught them whispering in a corner, and Eden jumped back like a teenager caught sneaking out. Back then, I told myself it was nothing, that I was projecting, that I was being petty. They knew I'd never question loyalty. That's what made it so easy. I opened the Notes app on my phone and started typing. Not a message, not a diary, just facts, times, places, words, every memory that now seemed to wear a different face. It wasn't about revenge. It was about understanding. Processing, reclaiming what had been twisted. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Maya Angelou's words hit different when you finally listen. I had been the last to know. That realization didn't come as a whisper. It came like a slap. I started going over the dinner again, not just Eden and Donovan, everyone. My aunt wouldn't meet my eye when I made my toast. My cousin Lena gave me that nod. Was it sympathy? Guilt? My brother barely said a word all night. They weren't just surprised by what my mom said. They were bracing for it. They didn't just keep secrets. They prepared the stage for my public embarrassment. I wasn't in the dark by accident. I was kept there on purpose. Even my mother, especially her, that smirk she gave after dropping the bomb, it wasn't off the cuff. It was rehearsed. She wanted me to break right there in front of everyone. She wanted the spectacle. I started the car, but didn't drive home. I turned out of the neighborhood and pulled into the nearest gas station. It was quiet, mostly empty, except for a beat-up truck at Pump 3. I parked under the harsh fluorescent lights and stared out the windshield. I cried. Not the kind of sobbing you see in movies, just a steady stream of tears that came without drama, without noise. They dried as quickly as they came. I walked inside the station, grabbed a small black coffee, and dropped $2 on the counter. The cashier, a guy maybe in his 20s, didn't say a word, just slid me a few napkins with the receipt. That quiet kindness? It hit harder than anything my family had offered in years. I sat in my car again, holding the coffee like it was the only solid thing left. The brightness of the gas station lights cut through the dark like an unwanted truth. Inside me, it was darker than outside. My phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls from Eden, voicemails from Donovan. A text from my mother. "Let's talk when you've calmed down." I didn't respond. They didn't deserve my anger or my attention. And then, a shift. Like a voice inside me stood up straight. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. "This is not your end. This is your beginning." I didn't need closure. I needed clarity. I turned the car around and headed home, not to sleep, not to cry, to work. Once I got inside my apartment, I dropped my purse, made a beeline for my desk, and opened my laptop. Timelines, receipts, my mom's medical bills, notes from tonight. Every word I could remember. I'd spent my career dealing with emergencies, trauma, pressure, things falling apart fast. I knew how to handle bleeding. I just never imagined I'd be the one bleeding from the inside. But now it was time to stop the hemorrhage. I opened a blank document and typed a title. Truth Timeline. There were pieces missing, and I knew where to look next. Donovan had a past. Everyone does. But now I needed someone who had seen his before-me life, someone who could fill in what I missed. They may have tried to break me tonight, but tomorrow I start rebuilding, brick by brutal brick. The silence in my apartment felt like an accusation. I woke up to messages, dozens of them, buzzing and blinking, shadows of conversations I wasn't ready for. I ignored them, but one caught me off guard. Unknown number. Subject: "You don't know the half of it." It was late evening when I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, heart pounding. The message was from a woman named Alicia. She said she used to be engaged to Donovan. She claimed she had pictures, texts, and things no one had told me. My stomach twisted. I suspected trickery, a cruel prank. Yet I screenshot the message. I stared at the text, replayed it in my head. If someone else knew, how many secrets were left for me to find? I spent hours digging. Alicia had a LinkedIn, a photo tag from medical school, someone they both knew. I found an article dated 2 years back. Local nurse breaks off engagement over infidelity allegations. The name of her ex was conspicuously missing, but hints lined up too many times. My hands shook as I compared timelines. His absence during my birthdays, phone calls ignored. I remembered promises about family emergencies and how Eden was always suspiciously involved. Betrayal wasn't just in the dinner. It had been threading through years, deep, steady, unbearable. That night, under the dim glow of streetlights, I met Alicia at a cafe in downtown Raleigh. It was quiet, small jazz in the background, smells of roasted coffee beans. Alicia was calm, but the sadness in her eyes was loud. She showed me photos, screenshots of Donovan's voice messages, messages about Eden, about promises he made to both of us. They were nearly identical to things he said to me. She warned, he always brings up the idea of protecting someone, usually Eden. She said she believed Eden was more than just a friend in the picture, that his loyalty was built on lies. I kept composure, but inside I felt brittle. It wasn't just about being cheated on, it felt systemic, woven into every promise, every soft word. After I left the cafe, I walked for an hour under streetlights. The night air was cold, but inside I was burning. I pulled out journal notes, questions I needed answers to. What did Eden know? What had Mom known? How deep did this betrayal go? By the time I reached home, I wasn't the same person who sat in that car after the dinner. Determined, yes, but careful. I opened a folder on my laptop and labeled it Evidence, Truth. I started gathering bank statements, copying voice messages, digging through phone logs. No more waiting, no more ignoring the signs. They may have thought they hid dirt well. They may have believed I would continue to forgive without knowing, but I recognized the pattern now. I saw the shape of deceit. I was no longer willing to stay blind in a story someone else had written for me. I woke up before the sun did. The light hadn't fully made its way through the blinds, but I could feel it trying. Still, the air in my apartment felt off, like it was holding its breath with me. You know that strange quiet when something big is coming, But no one's saying it out loud yet. That was the room. My phone sat face down on the kitchen counter, vibrating occasionally like it had something important to say. I turned it over, scanned through unread texts, Alicia's messages, screenshots, the things I saved but hadn't let myself fully read. I pulled up old photos. Eden, Donovan, us, smiling, laughing. Then I noticed little things. Her hand a bit too familiar on his arm. His eyes always drifting toward her when he thought no one saw. I used to call it loyalty, what I gave freely. Now, I was starting to think it was just a setup waiting to be used. Trust takes years to build. Seconds to break. I don't remember who said that, but this morning it stuck to my ribs like cold oatmeal. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't chasing closure anymore. I was chasing clarity. Juana had always played quiet, supportive, but something about her silence had turned loud lately. I needed to look her in the eye. So I got dressed, poured cold coffee from the pot I never finished yesterday, and headed out. Her place wasn't far. Eden's neighborhood. A few turns past the same street we used to bike as kids. Suburbia dressed up in tidy driveways and early morning joggers. Juana answered the door in sweats. Surprised, but not alarmed. She offered tea. I declined. "I just need the truth," I told her. At first, she played the part well. Casual tone, soft gestures. She admitted she had a history with Eden, said it was brief, said it ended before I ever met Donovan, called it nothing serious, like a teenage summer fling. I listened, but something didn't sit right. Her story was neat, too neat. Her voice had that cadence people use when they've rehearsed in front of the mirror. I asked about a specific date, one I knew Eden was with me at a work conference. Juana hesitated. "That weekend, I'm not sure. We weren't in contact then. But I remembered Eden leaving early, said it was for family stuff." I pulled out my phone, showed Juana a message Alicia had forwarded to me. It was from Juana. Something about being sick of sharing what should be mine. Her face dropped, not dramatically, just enough for me to know the facade cracked. I followed up with a photo, one from a party 2 years ago. Juana and Eden, leaning in, laughing, her hand on Eden's knee. It didn't scream romance, but it whispered something deeper than friendship. Juana set her tea down without sipping. "Look, Georgia, I didn't know it would hurt you like this. I thought we were done." She didn't deny it. She just softened it. Like betrayal was something you could wrap in a warm tone and hope it didn't cut. Then came the unexpected knock. Eden, of course, she stepped in like she owned the room, but she didn't say a word, just stood there, arms crossed, listening to the tail end of our conversation. I looked at her. She didn't flinch, she didn't defend, she just stood. That silence spoke volumes. Then, as if on cue, Kara, our old mutual friend, walked up the driveway. She had probably seen my car. She smiled awkwardly, eyes bouncing between us. "I didn't know you didn't know," she said. And just like that, it was out. She explained how Eden and Juana had been more than close for a while, how Eden had talked about Juana openly when she thought I was at work, how they'd laugh about Donovan like he was a pawn, a placeholder. My heart didn't sink. It boiled. They weren't just lying. They were building rooms and locking me out. Back at my place, I stood in the kitchen. Everything looked the same, but I didn't feel like the same woman who walked out this morning. On the counter, that old blue cup sat, one I'd given Donovan when we first moved in. Engraved with words he claimed gave him comfort. "So you don't forget who still thinks of you here." Now it sat chipped, neglected, like every promise he made. I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I opened my phone, started recording voice memos. I labeled folders. Financial, medical, family interference. I wrote in my journal, not as therapy, but as evidence. These weren't just moments, they were records. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I was laying bricks. Before bed, I sent one text to Donovan. "We need to talk about Eden, about everything." I didn't wait for a reply, but when it came, I knew. His answer would either confirm every lie or reveal the one he hadn't told yet. I pulled into the driveway slower than usual, heart roaring in my ears. The sun was high, heat creeping into every corner of the house I thought was mine. I stepped through the door, bags in hand, and froze when I saw the envelope on the kitchen counter. A single sheet, official look, a deed, bank statement, something stitched into every joint and wall of this home. I hesitated, then picked it up. My name, nowhere. Mom's name, stamped, legal, final. Every bill I'd paid, every paint stain, every replaced shingle. Mine. Ownership hers. I stood there, silent. The scent of Mom's cooking drifted from the stove. Old photos on the mantel glinted in the sun. Familiar things I thought grounded me now made me feel estranged. Every bill, every paint job, every repair, mine, but ownership, hers. I crumpled the paper in my fingers, anger hot and sharp. Then the phone buzzed. I saw a message preview from Juana. "Don't fret, I got this covered." My stomach dropped. Another echo of betrayal. I flashed through earlier signs, dismissive smirks, hushed laughter, agreements made without me. I confronted Juana via text. "What do you mean covered?" She replied, "It's not what it looks like." She tried to push guilt over honesty. Dishonesty is the enemy of trust, I thought. I needed more than vague excuses. By noon, I was sitting in a lawyer's office. Phoenix heat pressed against the windows. My friend Tobin beside me, silent but steady. My lawyer explained, paying the mortgage or repairs doesn't guarantee title unless it's recorded in your name. The deed, tax documents. Mom filed everything without my knowledge. Those promises Mom made about signing things over, emails I'd never seen, receipts I'd kept sealed in a folder, unused trinkets, nothing that changed the law. Fear clenched at me. What if pushing back would call me greedy, ungrateful? What if I was sued? But doing nothing meant losing more than money. My voice. My dignity. Later, I stood with evidence spread across the kitchen table, mortgage statements, repair receipts, emails, text threads. I waited until Mom and Eden were both home before I spoke, truth heavy on my tongue. All these years I built this house with my heart and wallet. You built your narrative. I said it calm. I meant it calm. Their eyes flicked. Mom tried to brush it off. Eden interjected, asking me not to make a scene, but the documents lay there like knife blades. Silence shattered the moment Mom tried laughter. Eden attempted a defense, then caught herself. I refused to be shamed any longer. That night I changed the locks. Mail rerouted. Bank accounts separated. I wasn't erasing them from my life, but I was no longer giving them access to it. I set boundaries like bricks. I didn't ask for apologies. I demanded transparency. Fixed title, acknowledgments for my payments, respect. In bed, I replayed the shapeless anger of the day. Betrayal pressed on me like a weight, but beneath it, something solid and cold. Resolve. This was the most honest thing I'd done in years. Then the phone rang. My lawyer's voice, crisp. "There's a complication in your deed, something your mother filed years ago that you never saw." I sat up. My heart stuttered. The complication could undo everything. Uncle Callan waited at the cafe table, his knuckles white around a paper cup. The late afternoon sun hit his face and eyes that carried secrets. I slid into the seat opposite him, trying to steady the tremble in my hands. I'd spent months gathering whispers. Today, I'd hear one outright. He passed me a folded email. "You need to see this," he said. I opened it, scanned lines. Idalia plotting to discredit me when I was dating someone before Donovan. Rumors she'd whisper, fake stories she'd seed, social damage. It felt like a punch. Memories of blocked numbers, accusations from Eden, texts I shrugged off as insecure jealousy now ringing like truth. I asked, "Why didn't anyone stop her?" Callan shook his head. "Everyone was scared of Mom." Betrayal wasn't just from sisters or lovers. It was silence from people who said nothing when I was getting crushed. Later, I was in my lawyer's office. Piles of documents, ticking clock, dry legal air. Joint accounts still under Mom's name or usable by Eden. Automatic withdrawals. I never authorized. Money flowing out toward Eden's ventures. Transfers explained away. My stomach churned. Then, legal forms. I signed papers revoking joint access, changing account ownership. Everything shifted. The lawyer said something cold but true. Paying mortgage or taxes doesn't make you the owner. It was more than money. It was control. Power. I left that office feeling lighter in pockets, but heavier in heart. I returned home, expecting confrontation. At the front door, Mom stood in the kitchen. She asked, "You're making a mistake. Everyone will think you ungrateful." Her voice was calm but brittle. Eden followed, saying I was overreacting. I held out the paperwork. Transcripts, bank statements, lawyer's explanation. "It's not overreaction," I said evenly. "It's my life." She recoiled. Eden tried to deflect. Mom's face hardened. Neighbors might have heard through the walls. I refused to shrink anymore. That evening, I sat alone in my room. My hands folded over pages and phone logs. I weighed what I might lose. Family dinners, peace, familiar faces. But worse was living a lie. I thought of a quote, "You can't pour from an empty cup." I made plans for boundaries. I selected people I might share truth with. I called Tobin to pick up key documents. My confidence wasn't fierce yet, but it glowed. Easier not to ignore shadows. Then my phone buzzed. Donovan calling. I saw the name and exhaled. Lawyer texted me. "Mom and Eden are claiming defamation. They believe you posted false evidence." My chest tightened. If they sued, if things turned public in the wrong way, there was risk. Yet something cold settled inside me. If I stayed silent now, I invited more lies. I tapped out a draft. "I have proof. I will share it when the world sees the full picture." I didn't yell. I didn't sob. I felt fear, yes, but clear, fierce. This was no turning back. Walking into that community center felt strange. I half expected people to behave differently, familiar faces smiling, pretending everything was fine. Instead, there were whispers. I saw what happened at the dinner. I caught them in glances. Old neighbors hugging Griselda, Idalia laughing too politely. I clutched my phone in my pocket. Proof. Evidence. The weight of it pressed in my chest, but I stood straight. When the fundraiser's MC called everyone together, I swallowed past the knot in my throat. I told them thank you for coming. Then I shifted. "There's something I need to share," I said. I played the video. Idalia's voice, clear, admitting everything. The whispers, the manipulation, how she used Juana and fed lies to the family. I watched Idalia's face drain color. Juana's eyes widened. Griselda stuck a hand to her cheek like someone slapped her. Around me, people drew in breath. Some gasped, some looked down, some stepped back. Juana stepped forward afterward, tears in her eyes. "Georgia, I'm sorry. I was wrong." Her voice cracked. I saw past it. I remembered every sorry that had been thin, borrowed, empty. Eden looked anxious. Mom glanced at me, urging me with her eyes. But I kept quiet. I didn't reach for forgiveness. I held the boundary. "I refuse to pretend anymore," I stated, voice loud enough for those near the front to hear. I demanded acknowledgement, for truth, for title to be corrected, for rumors to be retracted. Some people applauded softly. Others looked away. Eden stood still, shame in her posture. Someone in the back raised their phone, recording. This was public. Raw. I left before the night was over. Not defeated. Not broken. But knowing victory wasn't comfort. It was truth. Back in my apartment, the broken blue cup caught my eye. The cup I gave when trust still had weight. It sat chipped on a shelf. It felt like a memorial. What once was, what should have been, what finally was. I journaled, collected more evidence, contacted the lawyer about defamation if Idalia tried to twist this. I didn't want to be right in their eyes. I wanted to be honest in mine. My worth is not your narrative, and I'm ready for everything that comes next. I lay awake in my new apartment, city hum distant beneath closed windows. The sirens were somewhere nearby, nothing life-threatening, but urgent enough. My phone buzzed with texts from Mom, Idalia, friends. Please come back. We need you. Guilt clawed at me. But I was spent. I rubbed my temples. I remembered the blue cup they broke together, the promise engraved, so you don't forget who still thinks of you here. I saw its ghost in broken pieces. I decided, tonight I protect myself. By midnight, I signed papers for a tiny condo. New address, new beginning. I packed things little by little, childhood photos, dresses I wore only in stories, keepsakes I once believed meant something. The broken blue cup went in a box. Not hidden, just stored. A relic. I ignored Mom's calls. Idalia's texts. I rented a U-Haul, moved what I could. The walls that once held memories I didn't trust anymore. When it was done, I sat on the floor in empty rooms. My own rooms. I texted Tobin, I finally have a place to call mine. One night later, I found a white envelope in my mailbox, Idalia's handwriting curled on the front. I sat alone, lamplight flickering. Dear Georgia, it said, I'm sorry. I see now how much I hurt you. I paused. Memories surged, gaslighting, half-truths, her voice over dinner. Every time she said, trust me, when I knew I shouldn't. Tears formed, but the voice in my head stayed firm. This letter is not your absolution. I folded the paper, placed it in trash, its weight not enough to ground me. Morning came, glass of cold coffee in hand. Social media lit up. People praised the video, some condemned me. Comments echoed. She became the storyteller instead of the story. Others whispered, I broke my family. I read both. Typed a response. I didn't fracture the bonds. They were already broken. My lawyer confirmed the title at least moved forward. Local news caught wind, community center stories. That night, my truth had been loud enough. Perfection mattered less than honesty. Later, the hospital hallway smelled antiseptic. Mother was stable, but I stayed at the lobby door, didn't walk in, refused to act like nothing had changed. I handed the key to Eden, let her fill the space if she wanted. I packed up my wedding dress, something I couldn't let myself keep as symbol of empty promises. I journaled final reflections, who I want in my future. Honesty, not silence. Integrity, not expectations. Dawn cracked open through curtains. I stepped out onto my balcony, sky pink and clear. The weight on my chest felt lighter. A piece of me broke free. I sat at the small desk in my bedroom, the early light barely peeking through the blinds. A quiet morning, no calls, no demands, just the steady scratch of pen against paper as I wrote a letter titled, To the Woman I Hope I Become. It wasn't a list of goals or affirmations. It was more like a reckoning with who I had been and who I refused to be again. I wrote about grace, boundaries, and the lie I used to live under. That being silent was noble. That giving everything made me good. You do not have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm, I wrote. I sealed the envelope with a breath, tucked it into the drawer beside my bed, and set a reminder for 5 years from now. Not because I needed to be reminded of the pain, but because I never wanted to forget what it took to climb out of it. A few days later, I signed up for a volunteer shift at a community garden on the south side. It wasn't planned, just something I said yes to without thinking too hard. I liked the soil, the quiet chatter. No one knew my story here, and no one asked. That was a gift. That's where I met Alex. He was watering marigolds, wearing a faded baseball cap and a pair of worn work gloves. He nodded when I walked by, and we ended up working side by side, pulling weeds from a raised bed. He didn't talk much at first, but something about his presence didn't need explaining. Later, we sat on the edge of the planter box, sipping lukewarm coffee from paper cups. He told me his wife passed away 4 years ago, cancer, quick and cruel. Healing's not about fixing the past, he said. It's about growing something new beside it. That stuck with me. I watered my own patch of garden that morning and looked up just in time to see the sun crest over the trees. That sunrise didn't feel like hope. It felt like balance. like being okay with not being okay, and still showing up anyway. 2 weeks later, I got the call. It was the hospital. My mother had passed in her sleep. Peacefully, they said. Idalia left a voicemail. She asked for you, her voice cracked. I didn't know what to say. I listened to it twice, then deleted it. I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. I lit a candle at home, beside the letter I'd written to my future self. And I whispered a prayer, not for her, but for me. To live a life full and unburdened. The day after the funeral, Idalia texted, "We're clearing the house. Do you want anything?" I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, "No, thank you." That was it. I didn't need the furniture or the photos or the silverware Mom used on holidays. I didn't need proof of where I came from to know where I stood. A neighbor sent me a video clip from the funeral. Idalia giving a eulogy, her voice trembling. I didn't press play. I closed the file. Instead, I walked around my apartment, lights off, windows open, wind moving through the curtains. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I'd done enough explaining, enough defending. That night, I wrote one sentence in my journal. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning. Sometimes it means staying away. The next weekend, I visited the old neighborhood, not out of longing, just curiosity. I passed the diner where Tobin and I used to meet. I didn't stop. At the garden, Alex showed up again. This time, he brought me coffee. No big gestures, just simple presence. We sat under the shade of a mesquite tree, talking about mulch and compost, and things that keep growing if you just leave them alone for a while. Before I left, I handed him a small box. Inside was a spoon, silver, engraved, simple. It said, "Keep growing." He didn't say much, just nodded, then smiled. When I got home, I stepped out onto my balcony. The sunflower in my garden patch had finally bloomed, big and bright, facing the sun. And as the petals opened to light, so did I, not to forget, but to begin again.